we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Koberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show, or the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and today we're going to be going back to the very first case that the Drunk Turkey Show covered in the true crime era, or in category, I guess you can say. And that is the Delphi murders. So, truth be told, so for a lot of guys and gals who are wondering about the show or who are new to the show, who just recently caught me on with Jennifer Coffindaffer, former FBI agent, last night, or with Mark the Shark not too long ago on the Nancy Guthrie case, which I will continue to talk about. I have some more ideas about that case. But for those that haven't been following us for a while, you know, a little bit of a background on us. The Drunk Turkey Show, the name, this show wasn't supposed to be about true crime. This show was supposed to be about conspiracies, aliens, government conspiracies, you know, that type of stuff. That's actually kind of going pretty crazy right now with all this UFO.gov stuff. Well, anyways, I'm former law enforcement. At the time, my buddies Hyman Blue, they were on the channel and on the show constantly. Due to schedules and things of that nature, they're no longer as frequent as they have been. They come on maybe once every few months, and they'll join the show. But at the time, my buddy Blue, he was into, or he works in the medical field. I'm former law enforcement, and my buddy Jaime was into the true crime realm, so to speak, and so we kind of naturally gravitated towards true crime. So, but it was not our intention. You know, the name of the show came from, actually, we were going to be called Punched Turkey. You know, I got the name from, I was watching a Rocky, and it was the one where his trainer tells him, you take one more punch, you're going to get punch drunk. And so I was like, man, that's, this was during Thanksgiving. So I was like, man, kind of makes sense, you know, punch turkey, right? And I looked up on the YouTubes to make sure there wasn't a channel called Punch Turkey, and there wasn't, but there was a channel called Slapped Ham. And I was like, man, that's a little too close. And so I was like, you know what? I'll use the other name from Punch Drunk to Drunk Turkey. And so that's kind of where the name came from and how we got started. But we started talking about the Richard Allen case, and that kind of catapulted us into true crime. And then we started talking about the Idaho 4 case. And this has been mainly true crime ever since. And so kind of a little bit of a background on us for those that are new. And well, we started when Richard Allen got arrested. So I know that there was a lot of theories. There was a lot of people that thought a lot of different things, whether it was Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, you know, all these other characters or persons that came out throughout in the length of an unsolved case. I think it went for like 5 years before it was solved. And in that time, there was so much speculation because it was 2 little girls that tragically lost their lives in a brutal manner in a small town. Everything that, you know, is what is the formula for a very high profile crime to gain traction, to become viral. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, me from Texas, I had heard about this case when it happened. I was familiar with the Snapchat video. I was familiar with guys down the hill. And with that being said, I was familiar with it. I wasn't like involved or looked into it deeply. In fact, I thought that Keegan Kline had gotten arrested for it, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't until Richard Allen got arrested. I was like, oh, I guess that guy didn't get arrested for this. What did he get arrested for? And ended up being a bunch of child things. And so fast forward to now, Richard Allen has been convicted. He is in prison in Indiana. And I believe there is some open arguments that are going to happen from his defense team to possibly maybe get some sort of retrial or something done. And there's a lot of people that think that maybe perhaps they got the wrong guy. I'm not so sold on that, but I'm not the type of person to just kind of shoo something away. And so I'm the kind of person that looks at evidence and the kind of person that looks at facts. And I wanted to do that with you guys today. So what we're going to watch part of this, not all of it. I'm going to kind of fast forward through some of it. I watched it today. I wanted to give you guys a good show. I didn't want to be here just kind of scrumming through things, trying to figure out things to put together. So I watched it earlier today. My mind hasn't changed, but let's see what you guys think and what you guys' thoughts and opinions are. So without further ado, this is sorry about that. My microphone is just going all over the place. Give me 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. It was just buzzing and I didn't want to give you guys a bad show. So here we go. This is Vinny Politan, I believe is his name. I apologize if I mispronounce it, but let's watch this.
Richard Allen was railroaded. He had a case. He had evidence that pointed in another direction that he was not able to present. And now his attorneys will have an opportunity to do that in oral arguments at the appellate division.
So right off the bat, we can already tell what this guy's opinion is. He was railroaded. My kind of a difference of an approach between me and him. I'm like, hey, I'm open to an open mind. Let's see what you have to say. And this guy's like, no, he's railroaded. He got the short end of the stick. Okay. He had a case. We'll see.
In this episode, we're going to take a look at that evidence that the defense did not get to present. We'll bring in a PI who's been working the case to get some insight. I'm Vinny Politan. Let's investigate.
Let's do so, Vinny. Let's do so. I don't want to get copyrighted with your music, though.
It's a much bigger question about whether or not Richard.
And he does this throughout this. I've heard him say this a couple of times.
Heartbreaking. And as I go through some of this evidence in this episode, it's not about did Richard Allen do this or not do this. It's a much bigger question about whether or not Richard Allen was railroaded and not given the opportunity to defend himself.
So the first thing for me is I prefer to know that we got it right. And I would prefer that the guy that committed this crime is locked up for the rest of his life. And I would prefer that he stay there and not even on a technicality be out there to harm two other children or other kids. That's just my opinion. But, hey.
And give the jury the opportunity to see and hear all the evidence to make a determination if Richard Allen is the one responsible for brutally ending the lives of these two beautiful, wonderful young girls. We're talking about Abby and Libby, who were best friends. And when I think about that day, they're in Indiana, it's February, and it's unseasonably warm outside. And these two children, because they're children, do what all of us want our children to do on a beautiful day. Go outside in a small town like Delphi, Indiana. These two young girls were murdered, obviously. But this was a national story, a national case. And there were so many theories and so many suspects that were looked at, not just by the media and podcasters, but by law enforcement themselves.
All right. So here's the first thing. Just because law enforcement looked in one direction at one point doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. For instance, in the Idaho case, they looked at Jack DeCour probably initially. In fact, to the point where the mayor came out the second day and said that this was some sort of love type thing, right? And that was, you would have, when you look at it from the outside, looking in, you have a situation in the Idaho case where you have an ex-boyfriend girlfriend's leaving. They were out that night at the bar. There was phone calls exchanged in the middle of the night right before the murders happened. From the outside in, if you're law enforcement and you're looking in that situation, you're going to walk into that saying, hey, there's something there with this guy. But as the evidence comes in, and this is what makes the difference between a good investigator and somebody just like this guy looking for clicks, is you follow the evidence and you follow where things go. You don't just stick onto a narrative because people, I don't know, because it sells, in my opinion. And so, and if you're in law enforcement, you don't stick to a narrative just because you want to prove you're right. You want to be accurate. You want to be right, not just conscrew the information so that it appears it's right for you. And so just because they may have had a thought at one point doesn't mean that that's where the evidence led. So I think it's kind of very defense tech. I wonder if I don't know this guy very well. Again, I'm not very big into the true crime stuff outside of the stuff that I cover. And even at that, what I look for is mainly like, actual reporting, not people's takes. This guy seems very much more take. That's what he's about, his opinion, his take. And so I'm more about looking at the facts and evidence and giving my own take and opinion. And so let's continue.
And there were people that everyone was talking about for years. And then out of the blue, a local CVS guy named Richard Allen ends up being the one arrested. And everyone's kind of surprised and shocked because he was on no one's radar. But apparently he had self-reported to law enforcement right after this happened that he was there that day.
If we wanted to go back to the Idaho case, Brian Koberger was on nobody's radar when his name came up from the IGG. His arguments aren't valid. I think they're kind of weak.
So he's put on the radar by his own admission, voluntary statement that, oh yeah, I was there that day. And he gave a report about what he saw or what he observed.
And why is that a bad thing? I don't understand how that does. Are you trying to say that if he didn't walk in there, that he wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have gotten his name, they wouldn't have gotten anything? So what? If my brother was born differently, he'd be my sister. Who gives a crap? You know what I mean? Who cares? Who cares? The fact is he went and he spoke and he gave his whereabouts in his position there. This is already starting to upset me.
And that report kind of got lost for 5 years until it was found. Now,
Are you alluding that it was made up, sir? Because I don't think Richard Allen has come out and said that it wasn't real.
A big part of the investigation in this case was a look into Odinists, right? It's like pagan belief. And trust me, there are people who are legit Odinists who are nonviolent, et cetera. Here in this case, we are talking about the allegations of violent Odinists. And it's something that became prevalent in correctional facilities. And in this case, it became a big, big part of the investigation by law enforcement. And there were members of law enforcement that believed this was some sort of a ritualistic killing done by local Odinists. This theory was born through law enforcement during those 5 years when this case remained unsolved.
And I completely understand that, but just because that might be your opinion, that, you can have an opinion until something comes up and it changes it. Like in the Idaho case, again, Brian Koberger wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a person of interest. He wasn't anything until he became one when they had the DNA there. Now, in this case, why they didn't have DNA, I don't know. Beyond me. Now, but they didn't, and that's just the fact. We also have to remember that this murder occurred in 2017 these murders occurred in 2017 versus the Brian Koberger case in 2022. Although only a few years apart, 5 years, a lot of things can change with technology and stuff, and a lot of things have changed since then. And so it's rapidly growing and technology and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, you can have your theories, you can have your thoughts. In fact, law enforcement were told by Keegan Kline many times, like he did many false confessions, whether he was there, whether he knew who the person was, whether he was in the Jeep, where they're, leading up to the point where right before they got Richard Allen's name, they were searching the Wabash, I think it's what it's called, river, because he said that they threw a knife out there that was never found. And so you have to follow the evidence, and wherever the evidence may lead. And sometimes that evidence doesn't come to you until a certain part of the investigation. And that's what's called the break in the case. And in this situation, the break in the case, yeah, they could have had it right away. They could have seen it. But, I'm reminded by, what's the guy's name? Carter, I think is his name, the state police officer who said that there was a bunch of tentacles. Tentacles don't lead anywhere. Tentacles, what are they? They're like limbs on an octopus that have dead ends. What I think he meant was that they had a lot of things that they thought were good that ended up going nowhere, whether that be Keegan Kline, whether that be Fields, whether that be the Odinist, whether that be all these things, because at the end of the day, he's right. The Odinist theory and everything else came from law enforcement. It was investigated. Now, I don't know why some people can't get over certain things. I know some folks think that Ron Logan, because he made up his alibi at the time and they put their opinion out there and they said, hey, I'm right, and my opinion is it's Ron Logan. And then even in the face of the evidence, when it says otherwise, and there's another reasonable explanation as to why he made up the alibi, which ended up costing him, time in jail anyways. And I'm going to go through some videos. I got videos to debunk the whole Ron Logan thing, but you still stick with it because you don't want people to think you were wrong. And that's the effed up part. Follow the evidence.
So as we talk about these alternative theories that the defense has, you have to remember that they weren't picked out of thin air like many defense teams do in desperate cases where they have no defense. They're kind of throwing things up against the wall, looking for reasonable doubt here and there. All of this is a direct result of the investigation, which again was unsolved for 5 years. However, in this case, Judge Gull, limited the defense. None of that information got in front of the jury.
Well, that's because they wanted to blame people with less than what. So they were arguing that Richard Allen got arrested with maybe little probable cause or whatever the case may be. But they wanted to, in openly court, name other people and blame other people with even less. People that had alibis that were documented. In fact, one of the guys, a Holder, that they were talking about, he's on camera at work. And so they want to be able to, they're not going to be able to bring that into trial. You're not going to be able to put somebody up there. They didn't do that to Richard Allen. They had what was called probable cause, an indictment, etc. They went through the whole process so that they could, in open public court, officially charge and accuse him of committing such crime. And what Richard Allen wanted to do is to turn around and blame all these other people without doing any of those things, without bringing any shred of evidence outside of, oh, this guy drew an asterisk on his hand, and that just so happens to look like the stars that he bunched, or the sticks that he bunched up together on one part of one of the bodies, which I've seen the crime scene photos. They were sent to me. They're disturbing. I don't see ritualistic anything. I see somebody trying to, in my opinion, I don't know. It looks like a failed attempt of trying to hide the bodies. There's not anything that looks like any. When we get there, I'll talk about what it looks like, because I can tell you what it looks like to me. It looks like they were both just dragged in a certain place. But we'll get there. We have a bunch of tests. I have Steve from True Crime Web send me some videos of some tests that he did, some drag videos in the leaves, so that we can see what that looks like. The F on the tree, what that really could be and what that is instead, and so much more. So stick with us, hit the like button, guys.
So the jury heard the evidence against Richard Allen, and some of it's very compelling, and he may very well be guilty. The jury found him guilty. But my concern, and I think the concern of those of us connected to our system of justice, is that they didn't get the whole story. So let's talk about the whole story. Let's start by going to the most important piece of evidence in this whole case.
But that's the problem, is that they want to bring in a story. They don't want to bring in actual evidence that points like, all right, you want to blame Holder. Okay, where was he at that time? How do you get away from the fact that he's on video? I don't get it. I mean, how do you also allow that in trial? I don't see that being the case.
Which was the video that was taken by Libby. So brave, so smart to have recorded the man who was walking behind her, this bridge guy. This video became crucial evidence in the investigation. Let's take a look at it.
I don't know. I'm
See,
just
this is
from
the
this dude.
path that we go down. There's no path going there, so we have to go down here.
All right, let's look at that video a little bit closer. I have it too. Let's look at that. So that way we can get a good idea of what's going on here. Let's make this bigger. All right. So a couple of things. And I'm glad that they released the video from 2025. This is a 2025 video where they released the entire 43 seconds. Gives us an opportunity to see how close in proximity this guy really is. He's not very far down the line. He's actually pretty close, to kind of give you an idea of how short he is. Look at how tall the railroad ties are compared to his leg. Look at how small his feet are. Okay, there's a few things that we're going to be able to determine here in a second that I'm going to be pointing out. This is the 2017 version, right next to the 2025 version. Let me see if I can slow this down a little bit. No, it isn't. Man, I thought I slowed it down. But check this out. One of the things that I noticed is the discoloration at the bottom of his shoes. So let me get to it. Where did I stop? Here. So you can see right above his shoes that the pants, there's a little line there of discoloration. Okay. I hope I didn't pass it. I may have. Here it is. So you can see it better when he's walking. This is what I'm trying to point out to. What do you think that is? That right there is his pant legs folded up. So what we have here is when we look at a situation, we have to answer a few questions. Who, what, when, where, and why, right? So where are we? We're in Delphi, Indiana. What is it that we know? We know that this is a very secluded area, and they believe that the person that committed this crime is from the area. What do we know about the area? The area is very small, less populated. We're probably looking at very few stores, things of that nature. What kind of problems would that lead if you're short in nature? What that's going to lead to is a very limited selection, especially if you're stocky and short, on clothing and things of that nature. You're going to find difficulty finding bigger waisted, shorter legged clothing in a smaller populated area. You're going to end up having situations where you're, to fit width wise, you're going to be wearing some pretty baggy clothes, which may force you to fold your pant legs at the bottom. Also, look at the arms. Look at how scrunched up the arms are. I have a video where we're going to look at Ron Logan walking around. When he points up and when he bends his arm, his wrist, this comes down. This comes down because he's in the same situation. He lives in Delphi, Indiana. It's a small place. There's only a certain amount of clothing that you have access to. So if you're taller, you're going to come across situations that are opposite of what Richard Allen has, which are, shorter, sleeves and things of that nature, the high waters on the pants, etc. His sleeves on Ron Logan's arms are smooth. This is extremely scrunched up together. Another indication that this person is extremely short. Okay. This is a short guy. He has pants bent, and you can even see where the natural where the knee should be at on the pants, but his legs aren't long enough, and he has to fold the bottom part of his pants. And you can see right here, look at how creased out his jacket is. Let me pull up that video real quick of old buddy Ron Logan so we can check that out. Let's see. Let's pull it up.
Search for whoever killed these two Delphi teens. The bodies of 14-year-old Liberty German.
Please tell us a volunteer searcher.
They found him back here.
After 50 years.
And
be the possible mode up on in. You have information.
Yeah, we were
Let me
actually
see if I
steep
can
down a
find it
ravine.
real
It was
quick.
really actually hard to keep our footing. But Logan showed us for the very first time.
You see his arms? If he bends them down, they're not all scrunched up. That's a lot smoother. Look at where his it's hard to tell because the search for this thing's right here. The arms aren't as scrunched up. The bag, the shirt isn't, or the jacket isn't as baggy down.
That crime scene tonight, investigators have lifted the crime scene tape from this area.
And look at how he's walking around in that area. For an old man, and I know some people are going to say, hey, well, you know what? He was physically active. He was this, he was that. Unless this guy is moving around bodies and redressing them and moving them around throughout his yard on a daily basis, this guy should be extremely sore. You know, adrenaline and a lot of things are going. You know, I remember when I did some zip lining, and I think I got scared. Because I'm scared of heights, right? All I did was just grab the deal like this, and just my adrenaline and my fear from going down that thing, I was sore for 3 days on my arms. You know, I don't go bowling very often, but when I do, my arm is very sore. You know, when I was a police officer, I was very into being physically fit, whether that be, I used to do Insanity in the morning, P90X at night, and I ran 10 miles a day 3 times a week. I was insanely into physical fitness when I was younger. And if I got into it with somebody and I got into a tussle at work, I was very sore. Movement, especially in your neck and your shoulders, bracing. Again, you have to remember who, what, when, where, and why. What's going on? Where's the situation? The adrenaline. He's climbing up and down, chasing 2 people, getting one of them dressed, moving the bodies, doing a bunch of other things. And we're supposed to believe that this 70-plus-year-old man doesn't get sore. He's just going to be walking around like that without any ounce of showing fatigue or conducting movements that are not natural or normal that he would be doing on a normal basis. You get what I'm saying? Doesn't make sense to me. And then when you look at some of the issues, let me mute this real quick.
Information.
When you look at how, his arms here, they're not all scrunched up or anything like that. His pants are baggy, but man, this guy's wide. Look at how wide he is. He's huge. I mean, we're looking at a grown woman next to him, but this is a huge dude. And then you look at the video here. This is a small guy, especially when you compare it next to a little girl. Now, granted, I know he's a little bit further behind, but he's not super far behind. He's not super far off. And so I doubt that the person is Ron Logan. 100%. Just don't believe it. I would be shocked if it came out to be that was the guy. But yeah, no, I don't think so. All right, so let's go back to, what was that? Here it is. Good old Vinny.
Right there at the end. You heard him say, guys down the hill. And that figure all the way in the background, that was the bridge guy who seemed to be following the girl, the way the 2 girls are depicted.
So here's how the girls are placed. Now, I've seen the crime scene videos. Now, forgive me if I get the names mixed up, because, I get names back and forth, but I believe this is Abby, the one that was dressed in Libby's clothes, right? And so Abby, the one who was clothed, if you saw the pictures, and I really don't want to you know, what they look like is her arms are like this. Now, let me show you something real quick. Well, you know what? I have a video of, so Steve from True Crime Web does a video with his spouse. Let me pull it up right here, where he's doing a drag test. And this is how her arms are. The way you would position somebody so that you could lift them up. You know what I'm saying? So that's how her arms were, exactly like this. Now her foot, yes, one is below the other and it's crossed. But to me, I think it's because he's walking backwards the same way that Steve is walking backwards here. And then he turns her and then puts her down. She's the lighter one. The Libby is heavier. It may be easier to drag her from the hand, which is why she's like this. The reason she's like that is because, in my opinion, he's dragging her by the hand that way. Now, maybe his plan was to put them together or on top of each other and then throw the branches, but he had a difficult time to do so. I think so. Why was one clothed and not the other? I think he got confused and, you know, the bodies were wet and things like that. So it was hard to put on, you know, her clothes. It would have been impossible to put on Libby's clothes. So, yeah, I agree that's probably why they're close. But I don't see anything that reminds me of something that somebody would say, oh, that's some sort of sign, right? The sticks are placed on the arms as if he was trying to keep them from going up. They're not placed on the arms like in a situation where I think he's trying to create a symbol, you know, and that's the other thing. Like this one lady's going to come out here and say, oh, you know, if you look at this tarot card and you look at this ruin and this one angle and this other ruin, nobody can say what it is that they're trying to say. What's the message that is coming out here? Nobody can say that when they say that this was something else. And so Abby was, like I said, she was like this, and it was very similar to this position here. Now, Mr. Steve turned here, but can you tell if Miss Steve was right here, back here, over here, or over here? Let's make this the big screen. Can you tell where Miss Steve was starting, where the drag marks are? It's very difficult to see where these drag marks are. So that's where we started. And so as you can see, and I think this is what he did. I think what Richard Allen did was he crossed her arms, probably held one arm, you know, cross and the other arm like that, and then lifted her up this way and walked backwards with her this way. And there's going to be some leaves that are caught up on the legs here. But for the most part, it doesn't leave like a huge drag mark from where she came from. It's very difficult to see that, you know, which way they're coming. And the one thing about Abby is on the pictures, if you look at her on the evidence in the crime scene photos, her leg is all dirty, like it was dragged through the dirt. So this is the area where he dragged her at. And this is the next, you know, sometime later, you know, wind happens and things like that. And so that's going to blow leaves and things like that nature around. Remember, their bodies weren't found right away. It was found the next day. So wind and things like that are going to move things. and whatever sign of moving the bodies, it might be very difficult to see. Now, here's Steve trying to show about how much time that it would take to not just move, but also then grab the branches. And this is a fairly large branch, and he's going to put them in a similar position as what Libby was placed in. Libby and Abby. And he does this entire video is only 7 minutes and 20 seconds long. And it included, that going around. So definitely so if somebody says that it wasn't enough time, definitely enough time to move and do all this by yourself, one person, in a wooded area. So it's not impossible for one person to do all this. This is quite easy. And I would say that these branches are very consistent to the size and diameter of the branches that were placed on Libby and Abby. So it wouldn't have taken no time to do this. He's already done with her for the most part. And then if he were to, now I think he's going to change it up or make it more precise. Now he's taking photos. That's if the perpetrator did that, did they have enough time to be there and stage it that way? So good stuff from Steve from the True Crime Web. I got some more things from him, but let's carry on here. And we're probably going to be going through this pretty quick now.
There, you've got Libby, who's 14. She is found nude. She's wearing Libby's clothes at that scene. How did that happen? Why did that happen? Why were the bodies arranged the way they were arranged?
You see, that's the thing, though. There's not always an answer for everything. Sometimes people that are sadistic and just sick in the head do some crazy stuff that you're not going to be able to answer. In fact, if it was reasonable, then it wouldn't have happened if this was from a reasonable-minded person. That's the other thing that bothers me.
There's another image here that's important. There's a tree nearby. Let's take a look at that with blood on it. The question is, how does the blood get on there, and what does it mean?
Now they're going to say that this looks like an F. You can kind of see blood here, like all on the side of the tree here, and this looks like a thumb maybe, and with a lot of blood here. But let's go back to Steve from True Crime Web. We have that as well. So let's do the recreation on that. So here's what it is. This is what it looks like. This is the recreation that he made. Synthetic blood pattern transfers in droplets. Under a black light, this is what it would have looked like. And so basically what he was basically saying is, like this F part right here, the thinning and the broadening. He's saying this is a simulation of an injury sustained blood flow. And so, this is more consistent with one of them being up against the tree versus like Richard Allen going and drawing an F with his fingers. So, and I'm sure if we looked at a black light, it probably would have looked like that. It's just what we can see with the naked eye is what appears to be an F. But some people see the Virgin Mary and tortillas. That doesn't mean it's there. You know what I'm saying?
Is it part, again, of this ritualistic killing that's been alleged by some sort of Odinistic symbol that was placed on that tree? All of this became part of the basis of the investigators believing some of the investigators believing this may have been a ritualistic killing, and the defense truly believing that it was. I want to bring in Erica Morse.
So I want to respond to this. So that's a pretty dang linear. I mean, if it's a line, yeah, gravity's going to do that, on that one heavy part. But I'm not a blood spatter expert, and so I'm probably going to get Steve on so that he can, do his thing with it, and explain it. But I just wanted to bring it up that that's not somebody drawing an F with their finger in blood.
She is a private investigator who has investigated this case since 2023, and she's also the host of the Delphi Dirt podcast, which you absolutely need to check out, download, and listen to. Erica, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I definitely want to talk Delphi then.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start because we've got this huge appeal coming up. There are so many issues, over 100 pages, reading through it. To me, the one thing that really kind of sticks in me, and I never understood why it wasn't part of this case, but could you explain the ritual killing evidence in this case that was excluded by the judge?
There is so much. So in terms of the crime scene itself, those photos are still sealed. So certain aspects of that crime scene are still sealed. But there are very specific rituals to that crime scene, specifically how the girls' bodies were positioned to there is a tarot card.
So here we go. There's a tarot card and then there's some ruins. She said this is very specific. What is it? If it's very specific, what ruin is it exactly? And her legs are not like that. Her legs are not in a 4. Her foot is more towards behind the ankle. It's not behind the knee, Abby's. And her arms aren't behind her back. They're in the front like this. So this is very, very misleading, 100% misleading, right? And she's also facing the same direction as Libby. So you would expect that if she was supposedly upside down, then maybe perhaps she would be facing towards the feet of Libby, but that's not the case. They're both facing the same direction. And her foot is underneath her ankle and her front arms are like this, not the other way around. So this is, in my opinion, this is misleading and a bunch of crap. Sorry, that's what it is.
That is the hangman's card that has come up as a correlation to the crime scene. And then there is this rune, this F rune that appeared on a tree at the base of where one of the girls.
So if this was specific, show me the F rune and the hangman and how they correlate together in the same thing. Show me the tarot card that has the F rune on it. You want to say they're specific and they're very linked together. Show me the tarot card with the F on a tree. Show me it. What you're doing is you're pulling a thought over here and a thought over there and trying to put them together. And that was one of the things when this happened. So I had a friend who was very familiar with runes, actually kind of explained a lot of them to me and how they're used in today. Like, for instance, the Bluetooth logo is actually a Nordic rune for binding something or another. It's a binding rune. Pretty crazy stuff, how much Nordic stuff is in our everyday life. I mean, it's on the Bluetooth, it's on a lot of things. I mean, Monday or was it Thursday was Thor's Day, Wednesday Odin, some of that nature. So that's kind of where all these names come from. But let's continue.
Were located, and it appears to be an F rune, the letter F, drawn in blood. And to hear Indiana State Police say it, it's not part of it, but to hear Jeffrey Turco say it, that is very much a part of a ritualistic aspect to this crime scene. And Jeffrey Turco was the Purdue professor, or is the Purdue professor, who was intentionally hidden from the defense by Indiana State Police. He is an expert in ritualistic crimes and ritualistic aspects. And he wrote a synopsis that we received much, much later on, almost right before trial, where the police had said they'd excluded him as an expert witness because he said there was no ritualistic aspect to the crime scene. Then they even said they couldn't remember his name or how to get in touch with him. They didn't have a contact phone number for him. They didn't have an email address for him. I believe it was Andy Baldwin from the defense team who tracked down Turco, and then they interviewed or deposed him, and Turco said, I never said that. As a matter of fact, I was very specific that all of these elements do look like a ritualistic crime scene. But what he was very specific to say was that it looked like an amateur or someone who would just be either trying to stage the crime scene partially, or maybe someone who was doing like an initiation, someone on a very amateur aspect.
So she says that this guy was amateur, but that the symbols was on this other guy who was this high ranking ordinance guy, Brad Holder, I think is his name. Well, I mean, two things don't exist at the same time. Is it an amateur? Or is it this high ranking guy in this Odinist group? You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, it's just throwing stuff at a wall. Now, I don't know anything about, you know, what she was talking about as far as what this guy said or didn't say or how he said it. I'm interested into looking into that. But when it comes to, you know, the Odinist aspect of it, okay, well, they found the guy. Did they bring him, like, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I know they didn't bring him into trial, but did they try to use him in trial? Did they try to use him as an expert in their defense? Maybe. I don't know. I got to look into that one. So we'll see. Brad Holder was at work. I 100% agree with you. And I know he was on video too. And so, yeah, that's the thing. And that's one of the things that I was saying earlier was, you know, Richard Allen is over here crying about his rights and things of that nature, but he's yet wants to drag other people into the room or drag them through the mud and put them out there as possible suspects without any due process on them. It's interesting. It's interesting how that works that way.
And that this crime scene definitely had many ritualistic aspects. For me, I think it is so many witnesses, so many people who have come forward and talked about the different rituals that are done down there, the things that appeared on social media within the 24 to 72 hour window by certain persons of interest who were excluded from being brought up at trial.
Well, that's because they wanted to bring up for instance, the Brad Holder drew like an asterisk on his hand, and just because there was lines that crossed each other, they're like, oh, that looks like what Abby and Libby were, you know, the sticks that, and it doesn't at all. It's like looking at just one corner of the room and saying, oh yeah, that corner has a 90-degree angle. That must mean that this random picture of this other wall that's got a 90-degree angle corner must be the same room because there's a 90-degree angle corner in that bedroom. No, I mean, they looked at a small part and said, all right, you know, over here where all these branches intersect, you know, if you only look at it from that point, then that looks like an asterisk, but it's not. You know, that specific one that they're talking about, those branches connect to another branch that goes on the other side. So it's more like a rectangular thing around her, not the asterisk. It's just that one branch comes here, the other branch comes here, and then there's one here, and then there's one this way. And so it's more like a rectangle than it is, but they're looking at that one part where they all meet and conjoin and try to manipulate that into thinking people would think that it's an asterisk, and it's not. That's baloney.
All of these individuals began posting on their social media pages prior to any crime scene photos being released, prior to any crime scene knowledge being known, and their social media posts ended up matching the crime scene.
It did not match
the jury.
That's completely bullcrap. In fact, I think I got the pictures here. Let me see. Give me a second. I got to pull this down because I think in the same place, I have those photos of the Odinist stuff. I have the crime scene photos, and I don't want to share that. Delphi Odinist. All right. So this is what they said looked like what was on Abby. This was Brad Holder. This is the little thing he had drawn in his finger. And this actually was over here, but on this side was this. This actually doesn't even look anything like it. Let me pull this down because I don't want to share the wrong thing. And so, I mean, I have all these Odinist things. I have all these pictures saved, Elvis Fields. I went through it and looked at it as well. You see, like none of this stuff is that they had saved is real. Okay. You know, unfortunately, the best picture that kind of describes what is 1446. And so here's the one I was talking about here. Let me see. Hold on. I'm going to double check real quick because I don't remember. Yeah, I was right. There was more branches on the other side of her too. So yeah, let me close that up. So yeah, what this is here looks nothing like they're missing one here also. And then it's actually like way over here, but it's connected to this one. But to be honest with you, I think it may have rolled. I don't think that's where it was because it's like way off the body. It's kind of over here, still on top of this branch. And so, what's that? 1446. All right.
The jury never heard about any of this. And this was a big part of the defense theory of what happened.
Yes. And I always reiterate this, Vinny. People seem to think that the defense came up with this theory. They did not. The FBI came up with this theory. It started out with Greg Ferenczi's memo, which I believe was like 26 or 27 pages long. And then it developed by the defense team into the Franks motion, which was,
But that's the thing. That's the problem with some people is they expect that law enforcement's going to walk into a room and be like, bada boom, bada beam, this is what happened. And we're right from this moment. You know, she doesn't understand that there's a possibility of a process here, especially when one that took 5 years, one that ended up with a bunch of dead ends. Right, that they probably went down a lot of avenues that they thought one way or another. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they were pretty dang high on Keegan Kline. In fact, I would venture to say that it would be more believable that people would believe that Keegan Kline had something more to do with this than these Odinist folks. But yet, that's not where we're at, right? That's not believable enough. They're just trying to throw enough shade and mud at the wall to divert attention from what really happened.
Included by Gull as well, but very specifically laid out, not just, like, as you said, the ritualistic aspects of the crime scene, but then also all of these people close to and around the cemetery, Ron Logan, where the girls, whose property the girls was found or the girls were found on. Ron Logan's ex-girlfriend came forward, spoke with me and many others. And she's adamant that he has sadism aspects in his background, that he was very abusive, that he had a tendency to view CSAM. Then you have Keegan Kline, who actually lured the girls to the crime scene that day, or to the bridge that day.
That's not true either. So she's so wrong. All right. So the whole thing about the Keegan Kline and meeting them, that didn't actually happen. So what happened was that was what law enforcement said to Keegan Kline. They said, hey, we know that you told him you were going to meet him that day. And he said that wasn't true. And that is actually on the Murder Sheet podcast, and also I believe that they released that on their webpage too, the document there that shows the specific part where it's law enforcement saying to Keegan Kline that they have evidence that he said this, but that was more of a tactic to get him to admit to things. Now Keegan Kline has said a lot of things, and at the end of the day, there are false confessions. There are people that say things just to say things. There are people that say things just to get commissary, get put in a different place, etc. It's happened in multiple places. Even in the Idaho 4 case with Steve, he was contacted by people that were jailhouse snitches that were saying all these different things just so that they can get some benefits into things. Keegan Kline was in trouble for some very serious crimes and probably felt that he had an avenue of leverage with this case just solely because he talked to them, and that he could manipulate the situation enough that he could benefit it, maybe perhaps get a lighter sentence, maybe get some benefits to it if he continued to cooperate, etc. And I think that's what he did. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can tell all these pretty stories and these cool things. It's about, all right, when it comes down to it, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? Where's the video of Brad Holder, or where's the time frame that's missing on Brad Holder's day? Where is the knife that Keegan Kline used? I think his phone activity shows him somewhere else during that time, and it's moving. I know that Richard Allen's phone doesn't necessarily put him here during the crime scene, but where does it put him? I've never heard of that. I've never found out where that was. Do they even know? Was it because his phone was off during the time? They come out and say these things like, oh, well, they can't put him there. I was like, well, where can they put him? Because they can put Brad Holder somewhere else. They can put Ron Logan somewhere else. They can put all these other people somewhere else different during the time. That's the reason why you can't bring them up in trials, because they have solid alibis. Where's yours, sir? Where's your alibi for that specific time? Because according to you, Mr. Allen, you already gone from there. So where's your phone activity? Where's your log? Where's all this other stuff? Your cameras, all these other things that show you somewhere else. I don't think it's there. Thanks for pointing out this drifter on. Appreciate you. Thank you for the $10. I appreciate it. I'm all about truth. If it points in one way, it points in one way. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Hey, what's going on, Mark? Nice to see you, buddy. Good to see you, my man.
Who has this background as well of all of these ritualistic aspects, and him trying to be initiated in with the Odinists, which...
Who? She's saying Ron Logan tried to be an Odinist? Where did that come from? I've never heard that.
Ron Logan's ex-girlfriend came forward, spoke with me and many others, and she's adamant that he has sadism aspects in his background, that he was very abusive, that he had a tendency to view CSAM. Then you have Keegan Kline, who actually lured the girls to the crime scene that day, or to the bridge that day, who has this background as well of all of these ritualistic aspects, and him trying to be initiated in with the Odinists, which are also Vinlanders and members of the Proud Boys. And in Indiana, those are big organizations.
So everyone understands everything you're talking about here, all of the leads that began.
So this is some, like, what are you trying to say here, lady? This is some like super huge thing that they decided to go into small town Indiana and take the lives out of these two little girls. Wait 5 years to railroad Rick Allen. It took them 5 years to do it. They didn't know who they were going to blame. They waited 5 years, and then they decided, oh, this guy fits the bill. It's, I don't know.
Down this ritualistic path, Odinism, etc., began from a law enforcement investigation, and the jury did not get to hear any of that.
But when did the jury hear about the things that law enforcement are wrong about? Right? Like, you don't. If law enforcement go into a situation where, all right, I investigate this person over here, and that person gets cleared. Well, guess what? That person's name doesn't come out in trial. If I go investigate Big Blue, and I'm investigating Blue for a crime, and I clear him, and I go investigate Hyman, and Hyman he did it. I arrest him. Hyman's not going to be able to bring in the investigation against Blue. What? He was cleared. It doesn't even help him. And so there are certain things that you can bring in. I thought this guy, I don't know what his background is, but I assumed it was an attorney. I don't know why he's so dumbfounded by this.
Correct. And as I mentioned, it was about a year and a half ago, after Rick's sentencing, that the specific law enforcement agent who authored that memo was then murdered inside his office in Indiana. His name was Greg Ferenczi, and he was murdered by a man who I believe he's in a psychiatric hospital at this time, but he's been found not mentally fit to stand trial, I believe is the current state. And this man was a prison guard. And there are a lot of correlations on his own social media and his own posts about his following Odinism and things like that. So they couldn't not only hear about this memo, but Greg Ferenczi couldn't even testify because he was murdered between the time he was murdered. It was about 2 to 3 months after he authored this memo.
Wow. This is an unreal case that has so many layers, but the jury heard none of it. And now in this appeal, this will be part of the argument for the defense that, hey, the jury should get to hear some of this. The defense should be entitled to present their case and their theory of the case. Would there be witnesses the defense could call about Odinism, about ritualistic killings, about some of these social media posts?
Yes. Not only are there a slew of witnesses that could be called about these social media posts, witnesses to people who have reportedly confessed. That was the other thing. At some of these pretrial hearings, we brought forth individuals who had had conversations with these original persons of interest by that task force, these Odinists, and none of those witnesses were allowed to testify at Rick's trial either. So, and in addition to that, I think it's really important to say, Vinny, this is not known, what I'm about to say. There is an inmate who has come forward. His name is Reese Davis. And Reese has spent time in a facility with both Keegan Kline and Ron Logan. And he has claimed in multiple letters to the prosecutor that Keegan Kline confessed to him, as did Ron Logan.
Oh, that's it. That's it. They solved the case. They confessed to the inmate. Who cares about the confessions that Keegan Kline had made to law enforcement that they couldn't prove because there was no evidence to back it up because they were false? He confessed to an inmate. So that's all that must mean it's real. That must mean it's real. Almighty. I almost cursed. I'm not going to curse. I'm not going to let it happen. But this is stupid.
That they were both present and responsible for these girls' deaths. And that a letter, a handwritten confession by Keegan Kline that was sent to the prosecutor has been withheld as exculpatory evidence and exonerates Rick Allen.
This letter that you're mentioning, is this something that's been alleged? Has anyone seen this letter?
So when the defense received, don't quote me on this, I think they said they got 3 letters and Reese said there were a total of 4. And so there is 1 letter unaccounted for. And according to this inmate, it is the letter in Keegan Kline's own handwriting that he committed this crime along with Ron Logan and others.
Okay, well, let's go find the evidence. Where's the evidence behind that? You know, you can say a lot of different things, and Keegan Kline has said so much. You know, that's one of the things that I had looked into because I thought that was the guy. And so I wanted to look into it. And Keegan Kline has lied so much about things, about him being involved, not being involved, knowing who was involved, knowing, you know, waiting in the vehicle while it happened, etc. I mean, these are all things that Keegan Kline just said. And so now we're supposed to say, oh, well, the one that was correct was the one that he put in a letter to another inmate of some sort in his own handwriting. Well, you know, okay, well, let's just go ask Keegan Kline if it's true. I mean, it's pretty easy. He's still alive. You know, Ron Logan ain't, so he can't defend himself. So it's real easy for this inmate to come up here and say a bunch of things. I mean, hell, I could say that Ron Logan told me that he likes to dance around in yellow bikinis at night. Don't mean it's true. And how are you going to prove that he didn't tell me that? Oh my gosh.
Everything that went to a third-party defense was excluded. Nothing. He wasn't allowed to put on a defense, period.
He really didn't have a defense.
I sat 10 feet away from him. He was not allowed to even put on a defense. The trial lawyer's hands were cuffed. I cannot express that enough. And that is why cameras were not allowed in that courtroom.
Oh, that's bullcrap. Although I do agree that cameras should have been allowed, but that's not why they weren't allowed. Cameras have not been allowed in the courtroom in Indiana. That's just the way Indiana is. It has nothing to do with it could be Dick Allen. I guess it is. Richard Allen. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. The cameras wouldn't have been there. It could have been Anybody else you can think of. It could have been the trial of Brian Koberger. It could have been whoever you want to put in there. There wasn't going to be a camera there. That's just the way it is. That's the way Indiana rolls. I don't agree with it. I wish it wasn't the case, but this is very, very similar to when, like, you know, like this David case where we want, this public trial. We want everybody to see what the information is. And they give you this, this show of strength that's not really there because they feel that they have this, that they can fall back on things. Like in the David case, they come out, they're like, we haven't gotten the evidence. We want a speedy thing. We want to go right away and show the preliminary hearing. We want to know what's going on. Well, shit, the prosecution's like, all right, bet. Here's what we have. And they dropped a preliminary hearing, disclosure of everything that they're going to be putting on in the preliminary hearing, knowing that the defense was going to take forever. So what? So that they can show this, we wanted this to happen. They haven't told us what the case is. They don't have a strong case. They haven't put it out. They withheld information, or evidence has not come in at the speed that we want it. We haven't been able to look at it. They're withholding things, yada, yada, yada. Just kind of like the Idaho case, knowing very well that there's so much evidence that it's impossible for them to go through it in 10 days. It would be impossible for them to even receive it. And the defense knows that it's impossible. So what do? They say, hey, we haven't gotten it. So they must be withholding information. There must be exculpatory information because we haven't gotten it. It's only been 24 hours since we got the order. There's 50 terabytes of information and we haven't gotten it. And not only do we want it, but we want it categorized and we want it in order and we want to know exactly how you're going to present your case. And the cool thing about it in the David case is they did it. And they gave it to him like that. All right, we're going to give you the way we presented our case and we're going to make it public. So that way the TMZs of the world, or this guy of the world that likes to, portray on, this conspiracy stuff, that they have nothing to stand on. I mean, if you go and you watch Harvey from TMZ and stuff, they're all pouting. Well, what? I've never seen somebody put so many preliminary details in a preliminary, whatever, document that it was. This doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because they knew exactly what because he's friends with the defense attorney for David. They knew exactly what you and David planned, and they beat you to the punch. They beat you to the punch, and they put the information out there. That's all that is. And so here in this scenario too, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Because what happened in that courtroom is a crime.
Another part of this case that's been very confusing to me, and I think to a lot of people, are the sketches involved in the case. Sketches that the jury never saw. Again, something else that was the judge did not permit this jury to see.
Do sketches usually permitted? I honestly don't know. But let's look at something real quick when it comes to eyewitness accounts. Oh, let me pull it up real quick. So here is the probable cause affidavit. In the probable cause affidavit, you have a few people. There are some interviews. So here it is. There are interviews conducted with 3 juveniles, Ms. Voorhees, Wilbur, and Spaeth, who advised, along with that they were out there at the Monon High Bridge on February 13, 2017. And let's see. Here it is. So Brianne advised that they started walking from the bridge, heading home at approximately 1:30, and they saw a male. They saw maybe 1 or 2 people on their way out, including an unknown male. Okay, Brendan advised that the unknown male was walking kind of with a purpose, but had something that seemed to have maybe been covering his nose or mouth and his head, and was kind of tucked down. Didn't know if his hood was down or if he had a hat on. He had a blue or black jacket with blue pants on. She stood as high as his upper forearm, and was just kind of going out of general height of the family. So we have to remember who, what, when, where, and why. These are girls that are walking out of a walking trail. They're not trying to remember everything that's going on. They're not asked to remember everything. But eyewitness testimony, because of that, is not trustworthy. It's really not. So you got to take it with a grain of salt when it comes to certain details. The major things: did you see somebody? What were they doing? Where were they walking? The general description, but you really got to be cautious about what's being said, because as you can see here, she didn't know the color of the jacket. or the height. The other friend said, and they're all describing the same thing, that this was a guy in his 20s or 30s, bigger build, Caucasian, wrinkly face, square jaw, black jeans, not blue jeans like the girl before, black hoodie, not blue or black, and a hat and black boots and a black mask. And then the other friend, Spaeth, said that she saw an unknown male, that she described him as being creepy, described him wearing like blue jeans, really light blue jacket. The other folks said it was dark blue or black. This one says light blue, and maybe didn't really show his face, and had a canvas duck type jacket. So these are three individuals who saw the same person, probably, I would guesstimate, from the closest in proximity to the suspect as he's walking in. And they all have three different descriptions and colors and things of that nature. Why is that? It's not because they're lying. It's because memory is not the greatest. I mean, I could ask you what color shirt you were wearing 3 days ago. You know, you probably aren't going to remember unless you're wearing a uniform, right? It's just, unless you're me, I wear black all the time. I have like 50 black shirts, but most of the time people aren't. And if I try to tell you, hey, describe this one person that you saw for the first time, you know, and in this one scenario a couple of days ago, it'd be very difficult with a fair amount of accuracy to do so. And this is proof of it. So when they come in about these sketches and stuff and them being different, these girls saw somebody as they were walking in, and they all described different things. And it's just solely because that eyewitness testimony is not the best. It's not the best. It's just what it is. And so, you know, it's funny that people would think that, all right, or I would say, okay, this is okay. And then you look at like Betsy Blair's description and say, oh, well, that one has to be 100% accurate because she said that it was 100%. She's going through the same thing. She was not asked to remember anything. This was not anything out of the ordinary. And she was even further away from the suspect in these three juveniles. So one would expect her information to be less valuable, or not valuable, but less accurate. She's also the same person that thought she saw like a 1965 something parked outside when there's a video of the vehicle passing by. And it's clearly his black Ford Focus hatchback that's passing by. It's not a 1960 something, whatever the case it is. And if she really truly thought that was the case, then you really should be concerned about what it is that she drew out there. The only thing that you should take into consideration is that she saw a person and there was a man on the Mohon High Bridge shortly before she saw two little girls walking towards that bridge who are believed to have been Lily and Abby. That's probably the most that I could tell, or that I would be able to take from what she put out there, is that there was a person out there, most likely your suspect, that was out there. Description and everything else that comes with it, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because it's not going to be 100% accurate.
The first sketch I want to show you is a result of a description by a woman named Betsy Blair, who was in that area that day. Take a look at this sketch, and let me give you the background here. This sketch was made just a few days after the attack, okay?
That's a big problem. It was made a few days after the attack, bro. It wasn't the day. And to be honest with you, this one kind of looks like the guy. And the other thing is, too, they want you to look at Richard Allen as how he looks today, not how he looked in 2017. That's the other problem that I have with this, is that, like, oh, they're describing a 20 to 30-year-old man, not this middle-aged man that we see here today. Of course, he doesn't look the same. You know, I guarantee you, you know, especially once you start to get older, there's a big difference when you're 29, 30, and 35, 37. And the same thing can be said once you hit about 43, 40 years old. I don't look the same, you know? And so, and this guy looks like crap. So, you know, he don't age very well. So, and especially after committing a crime like this, right? Especially if this is his first time doing so, there's going to be some stress. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to go through. He's going to go through in his life that maybe perhaps aged his ass a little bit. You know, did you think about that, Mr. VPI?
See here. What's interesting about the timing of this sketch is it's not immediately after, it's at least 3 weeks later. And it's also, the sketch is made after the release of the Bridge Guy video.
Oh, come on. Are you trying to say that you can draw this out of that? I've seen clear video of Bigfoot in this guy's face right here. There's no way you can say, all right, they drew this composite based off of this image over here of Bridge Guy. That is complete garbage. That is garbage if you believe that.
So the public knows what the suspect looks like already, and then you get this sketch. Now, you look at the sketch, you look at the Bridge Guy, you look.
So they know what the suspect, oh my God. My gosh, man, this guy's on something.
Richard Allen, and I see a consistency, a match, right? It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense, though, is the sketch all the way to the left that was done just a couple of days after the girls were murdered and before anyone had an opportunity to see the Bridge Guy video. To me, that's significant. I want to bring back in Erica Morris to talk about.
I don't know what this guy can see, man. I don't know what he's on, but I want it that he can see that clear, that his eyes can all of a sudden say, all right, let me clear up the pixelation. And I see this image of what is ridiculous.
Betsy Blair and the description and the sketch of the Bridge Guy that she provided, that description in the sketch. Give us the background here on who Betsy Blair is and the sketch that was a result of her description.
So Betsy, in my opinion, and the opinion of some others on that defense side, is that Betsy Blair is the most credible witness in this entire case.
Well, that's because they don't want the juveniles to come forward and talk, because they put Richard Allen coming into the park at 1:30. Now, they think that Betsy Blair is the most credible person, but here's the thing. These girls who saw Richard Allen, let's go back to that real quick. Let's go back to that. Guess what they did? They took a picture at 1:26 right before that they walked out of that park at the trail here. I'm gonna see if I can find it. But they took a picture, and here it is. Hold on. Brianna advised that the four girls started walking towards the Freedom Bridge at approximately 1:30. Okay. Now, let's see. I know it's in here somewhere. At what time they took it. It's at 1:26. I wish let me. There it is. Among the photographs that Brianne showed investigators was a Snapchat photo taken at 1:26 p.m. while the four girls were at a bench east of the Freedom Bridge. So this is the stuff that they don't. This is why they say, oh, this other girl is the most credible. Man, this is something you can't debate, bro. You can't debate this. There was a picture taken at 1:26 before they walked out. This is a time frame that you can't debate, that they took a picture, and they have the same description, because guess what Richard Allen said? Rick advised that he got to the trail. He says he got there around noon and stayed for an hour. Of course, he's going to say he left before the girls, disappeared, right? But let's see. Rick advised he saw three girls at the trail entrance. He described one taller with black and brown hair. He later told law enforcement he believed the taller one may have been older, probably babysitting the other two. He advised that he then walked to the Monhan High Bridge, walked back to the overlook bench near the trail split, and sat for a while to check his day trades on his phone before he walked back to his vehicle. All right, so this is what he said he did, that he went to the Monhan High Bridge. And I believe he even said that he looked down and was looking at fish, right? So let's look at some things real quick. Why don't they like the juveniles' statements? Well, it's because they said that they saw him coming in. Well, Rick also said he saw them coming out. And the thing that codes them together is that damn picture at 1:26 that proves that interaction happened after 1:26 p.m. Right now, why is that a big problem for Mr. Allen? So let's look at this. This is
of the Monhan.
Let me mute this real quick, because I'm going to end up doing this in fast time. So this is the Monhan High Bridge, and this is around the area where the girls actually interacted with Richard Allen as he's approaching this area. Okay, so this guy stops around. Let's see.
On the trail.
So he's going to go on the trail and he's going to come and he's going to hang around here. We're going to start the time after
security cameras.
All right. So we're going to start the time after he has left this area. And I'm going to speed this up too, so we can get it in fast speed. And so we are at 5 minutes right here at the bottom part of the corner. We're at 5 minutes, 33 seconds. Let's speed this up. So right here, he takes off. Let's back it up. So at 5:40, he leaves the area. So how long does it take for him to get all the way to the end? That's the question that we need to answer, right? Because according to him, sorry about that, y'all. According to him, he gets there and he walks straight. He walks all the way to the Monhan High Bridge. So this is what he said he did, that he walked straight to the bridge. So let's figure out how long it's going to take. And there's some caveats to this as well, right? Meaning there's some entry points and stuff that are going to be some key points that we're going to look into. And so if he's walking this way, we're at about, and I have this super speed, as you guys can tell. So if not, we would be waiting here for a while. So we started at 5 minutes and 40 seconds down this trail. Now, we haven't gotten to the bench yet where the girls took a picture. So right around this corner, we're about to see it. Now, they didn't describe the guy jogging. They didn't describe the guy running. They said he was walking with a purpose. And so, we'll give Rick Allen the benefit of the doubt, and we'll shave 30 seconds off of this walk too. All right. So we'll start off with 30 seconds, off of the entire walk, not just from here to the bench. So here we are at the bench. And that bench, they got there at 10:50. So this started off at 5:50, 5:40, 10:50. That took 5 minutes. So there you go. If the picture was taken at 1:26 and they were walking in the opposite direction, it would have been about 1:30, 1:31 when they interacted with Richard Allen. All right. Now this guy kind of slows down a little bit. So, give him a couple of seconds there. So we're going to subtract. Right now, we got 30 seconds subtracted. Here's the next bench that's out there. Now, here is the entry point for, I think, the Myers entry. This is where Libby and Abby got dropped off, and this is where Blair also parked and started her walk. So he goes around and walks this way and does some things. So we're going to subtract another 10 seconds, put it another 10. So we're at 40 seconds subtracted for Richard Allen from the end walk here. Now, here's the other thing. We're at 13. Let's write this down. Because Blair comes in through here, right? And she turns. So we're at 13:30 when he starts walking back. 13:30, put it 13:40. I want to know how long it takes for her to get from this point to the Monhan High Bridge. And again, she was described as walking, maybe walking with a fast pace, but walking. She didn't go jogging. She wasn't running. She wasn't doing sprints or anything like that. She was walking on the trail. And I believe this was her third time. So I would say maybe perhaps it could have been on a slower time, but she was walking. So we're at 5:50, 5:40, and 13:40 separately. We're now at over 11 minutes from the start to the finish, from where we're at now. That it's taken 11 minutes to get from the beginning to this point. So we can now see the Monhan High Bridge at the end of the video. And again, I have this super sped up. All right. Now he walked out a bit of a ways because he said he was looking at the fish, right? That he would look straight down to look at the fish at the first pier. So that is to about right here. Okay. So we're at 19 minutes and 28 seconds. So we subtract 40 seconds from that. What is that? Like 18 minutes and 40 something seconds, 45 seconds, 48 seconds, somewhere around there. And so 1848 minus, we started off at 540. So 13 minutes, put it 13 minutes even to walk from the entrance all the way over here. Now we're at 1928 and it was 1340 when it was at the Myers place. I want to write this down. I don't have anything to write it down. I'm going to put it right here. So we started off at 540. And it took, that was the first one. Then 1340 was the Myers. And then right now it is, took him to 1928. So what does that mean? So in order for Richard Allen to, what he would have needed to have done in order to have not have been him on the bridge is he would have had to have walked all the way from the point of entry to this point back past the Myers entrance here before Betsy Blair got here, exited her vehicle, and then went down the went down to the bridge, right? And so from here to the middle point, 1340 to 1928 is roughly, what was that, like about 5 minutes? So you had 5 minutes on top of the 13 minutes to go from the entry point of the trail. In order for this to not be Richard Allen, he would have gone from the entry point of the trail all the way to the middle point of the Monon High Bridge, back past this point, and it would have taken us 19 minutes to do. Here's the problem. All right, if we go back to the probable cause, Betsy Blair, she shows up and she's on camera. Let me see, where is it? There's so many of these Blairs. Okay, so she at approximately, no, that's a little bit later. The video from the Hoosier Hardware store captured Betsy Blair's vehicle traveling eastbound at 1:46 p.m. Right? And what time she got there before Libby and Abby. And to be honest with you, he would have had to have passed Meyer before Libby and Abby got dropped off, which was at, and there's cameras and stuff like that, 1:49. So that's 19 minutes. I mean, he would have had to have been going straight there and back. You think there's enough time there? That's cutting it close. I don't think he had enough time to go all the way from what are we at? And that's me giving him 40 seconds. All right. That was me giving him 40 seconds. We're at 540 minus 1920. So let me do the math real quick. 19 minus 5. That's 14 minutes. And there's some change there, plus the 5. Yeah, there's no way he could have made it back in time. Just no way. He would have had to have hauled tail. Because what time did they get dropped off there? At 1:49. And actually she was there, so I was wrong. Because she was there at 1:46, because she was there first, because she saw, Betsy Blair saw she saw the bridge guy and then came back and then passed Libby and Abby. So she was there first. So he would have had to have gotten onto the Monon High Bridge and back past the Myers exit or entry point, and then somebody else would have had to have crossed Richard Allen's path, which he doesn't say he saw anybody, would have had to have crossed Richard Allen's path at that time and been wearing approximately the same stuff and approximately the same height, or at least be vertically challenged as well, and gotten on the Monon High Bridge in time for Betsy Blair to come around the corner and see him. Nah, that's impossible, because that's 16 minutes. And again, he wasn't jogging, he wasn't running, and we're at 19 minutes for him to have walked from the entry point all the way to the Monon High Bridge to the point where you can see into the water, turn around and walk back. There's no way he would have made that in 19 minutes or in 16 minutes. That's killing 3 minutes. That's insane. There's no way. There's absolutely no way that he could have done that. And then he said that he went and sat on a bench. He saw nobody else. Nobody else saw him. So yeah, no way. Absolutely no way. So that, to me, that's the part that when it boils down to everything, this is the part that makes me believe that he's the bridge guy, is because in order for the events to have happened in the manner that Richard Allen said they did, he would have had to have entered the Monon High Bridge, made it all the way to the middle of the bridge, which took this guy over 14 minutes to do, turn around and come back to past the Myers spot, which took this guy over 5 minutes to go from the Myers part to the middle of the Monon High Bridge. That's how long it would have taken. And so it would have taken an additional, 5 minutes to come back. He must have done that in under 16 minutes. And it's, in my opinion, unless he's sprinting or jogging, that's not going to happen. And nowhere did Richard Allen say in his what he said he was doing that day, did he say he was jogging. He said he went and he sat down on a bench after looking and was there for a little bit, checking his stock trade or whatever it was. So there's just no way, in my opinion, that he could have done this, that he could have gotten to the Monon High Bridge and back here before Betsy Blair was out of her vehicle and down this trail. And then again, Betsy Blair didn't just go down to the Monon High Bridge, turn around, and then exit and leave. She went back and forth and didn't see Richard Allen sitting at any bench out there. Nobody saw him. Again, we're most credible witness in the entire group here that, as she claims here, why isn't she saying that she saw your friend here, Rick Allen, on the trail? Why isn't anybody saying that? You know what I mean?
Betsy is a woman, I believe she's in her 60s. She was walking the trails that day, and she does it for exercise on a consistent basis. That's a regular routine for her.
Oh, and that's the other thing. So this guy got to the middle of the Monon High Bridge while it was, let's put it back up real quick. While it was repaired. Look, this is when he's going. It's already fixed. It's not all jaggedy like right here. You know what I'm saying? So, him getting here to that point where you can see straight down, I would assume this would have taken longer, regardless of how comfortable you're walking on that. There's no way you can walk this at the same speed. If you're stupid, you probably could try and do it. You probably hurt yourself or fall. But, if he's walking out here and there's no purpose for him, like, for instance, Libby and Abby aren't here yet, and so he's not trying to get there with a purpose yet, he's not going to walk this at a super, super high speed. And so, he still had to turn around and walk this back. I don't know. So I just doubt it.
And what was so compelling about Betsy's information is that she happened to be wearing a Fitbit that day, Vinny. So even all the way in 2024, we could earmark her timeline to the minute, actually to the second, because we had a map of her Fitbit. So everything was easily confirmed in Betsy's story. That's number one. Number two, Betsy Blair, she left the trails that day to go to another area. It was a few blocks away and used the restroom. So she varied a little bit from her normal routine. She got done doing one loop, I believe she said. She stopped, ran to her car, went to the restroom, came back. It was during that time that she saw this man with this poofy hair. And she described...
That's not true. So according to the document, she did leave, but it was when she came back on her third time. It wasn't while she was leaving. She's making it seem like she saw this guy and then left. That's not what happened. She had gone there at 12 something and then left and then came back at 1:46. That's when she's on camera pulling up, is at 1:46. And so, she gets off and then she goes and she sees him and then walks the trail again. So this is not the a scenario where she's trying to make it seem like, oh, well, she got back in her vehicle and left at that point, and that she wasn't on the trail anymore. Man, this lady's really trying to lay it on thick with the
a man in his early 20s, poofy hair, young male, a little bit stocky in the face. And that's one of the sketches that was released to the public, but was not. There are a total of 6 sketches, Vinny, and none of them were allowed to be shown at trial. That's a huge problem for me. None of those, not even the bridge guy sketch, was allowed to be shown at trial. So Betsy Blair not only described this sketch and rated it a 10 out of 10, but Betsy also stated she thought this whole car was the vehicle. She was also further than the 3 juveniles that we were talking about earlier, whose recollection of the person that they saw at a much closer range all varied between the 3, but yet she wants to harp on this one as being a 10 for 10 strictly because she said it was. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. Now let's look at what she really said. So let's see. At approximately, she advised that she observed a man standing at approximately 50 feet from her. And she's a lady in her 60s. And we're like, yeah, her eyesight and her everything is keen. It's better than the juveniles that were 2 feet away from him. And they got things wrong. But no, this 60-year-old woman from 50 feet away, not paying attention to this person. I knew she was like a man in his early 20s, bull crap. A man in his 20s or 30s. Said boyish looking, but average height with no facial hair. Not that this was a guy in his 20s or 30s. So it's just, I don't know. I don't like this lady, to be honest with you. I think she just likes to manipulate the truth. I hate when people do that. There's a truth and there's only the truth. And that's why the title is The Truth Matters in this case, because there's just the truth, not a manipulation of the truth, not some sort of fabrication of the truth, not somebody's truth, the truth. And the truth matters. They wanted to try to get her to sign off on a different sketch. No, this is not really who she saw. She more saw the guy that looks like Bridge Guy. Betsy Blair was so frustrated, and it's confirmable in the trial transcript, that while she was on the stand, she actually continued to slide in information about that sketch, and Gull had to tell her to shut up, basically to stop talking. She's like, "You're not allowed to discuss that." That's the judge. Correct.
The judge is shutting down the witness. So
correct.
Let's just.
And that's not uncommon. If there's something that's not allowed, they're not going to allow it. You're making it seem like, oh no, here's something we found. Come on.
Clarify here. So the sketch that she described looks nothing like Richard Allen. I mean, looks more like Justin Timberlake than Richard Allen from my perspective.
Correct.
Much younger. So what is the time frame and the placement of where she sees this person versus other witnesses?
Don't trust this guy's eyesight. If he thinks that sketch looks like Justin Timberlake, this guy's eyesight's worse than the Blair lady.
So, and I'm really sorry to say this, but every other witness in that case that took the stand on behalf of the state and provided a timeline about that bridge was a friend of.
See, here we are. What was it about? The timeline, right? And this is friends of Libby and Abby. So what do you think happened, ma'am? Do you think that Libby and Abby's friends that are going about the timeline in which they saw somebody, do you think they have this weird degree or of understanding of technology to the point where they can manipulate a Snapchat photo that indicated what time that they took that picture of 126, and you nor your defense team nor the state could figure that out, and somehow these girls did it? And for what? Oh, we're going to do this in 2017 so that 5 years later, when they finally come up with some patsy, we're going to be here and say, oh, well, we were there on the bridge just at, on that trail at that time, seeing this person. What you're about to say here by blaming these young girls' friends and saying and trying to accuse them of lying in favor of railroading your client or your friend here, Dick Allen, you doing that don't look good. You look like a piece of crap, in my opinion, when you're doing that. You're trying to railroad their friends who are grieving and saying, oh, well, they had a reason, they wanted closure, they were willing to just roll over on anyone. What are they doing? The only thing that they said was, hey, they said the exact same thing that they saw back in 2017. They saw a man walking in. Now, they didn't know who it was Richard Allen. They didn't point the finger at Richard Allen, say it was him. It was the guy that worked at CVS. Go arrest him. No, their story didn't change. And what did they have to prove the timeline? Was they had a picture. It's not just their statements. It's not just their words. They had a picture with a timestamp. This was documented. This lady is really getting on my last nerves.
Libby German's family. That's a problem for me, Vinny.
And you're a problem for me, lady.
And I've never been able to say this out loud. Really.
And you shouldn't. You really shouldn't, because what you're about to say is garbage.
Voorhees. I'm trying to think of the other ones.
You don't even remember their name.
They're escaping me at the moment. But all of these girls, Bree Wilson, these are all friends of Libby's and Kelsey's. These are people who wanted closure. That's why we state that Betsy Blair is such an important witness, because she's the only one who provided a specific timeline using an electronic device, a digital device.
Oh, and the Snapchat wasn't? That wasn't oh my God, this lady, I'm about to throw my water at the screen. The digital device wasn't there with the damn Snapchat photo? Are you kidding me? Can you listen to what you're saying? No, at the end of the day, you're just, looking for views, looking for money, and are willing to sell your soul to protect somebody who killed 2 little girls for fame, money, and everything else. That's what you're doing in this situation.
That we could then, confirm. And she's so adamant about that sketch. And mind you, she also described in her deposition seeing a classic vehicle, like I believe we labeled, or she called it was it 65 Comet, a Mercury Comet.
Well, there was a camera that picked up a lot of vehicles driving through there, lady. Did they pick up a 65 Comet, or did they pick up a hatchback that looked very similar to Richard Allen's at that time that he said, or at the time that they suspect that he drove up there and got there? And if you're going to go in here and say, oh, her eyesight is so perfect, and say that her vision of that Ford hatchback was one of a 65 Comet, then you should be questioning her damn description as well. You're just picking and choosing and cherry picking whatever makes you think you look right. And that's why Vinnie Politan at the end of this is like, he may very well be guilty, because damn well he's guilty. Damn well, with that stupid look on your face too.
An old classic. Nothing like Rick Allen's, late model Ford Focus hatchback. Nothing that looks like that.
Except in the damn camera from the Hoosier Harvest store, there's a freaking hatchback driving by. There ain't no damn 65 Ford Comet. Point that out to me, lady. Point that out.
The cars are completely different shapes.
Completely different shapes.
And if she can't tell that, then you should be really questioning how good her vision is from 50 feet away on a person that she wasn't trying to remember.
Considering the Hoosier Harvest Store video was never even shown in its full entirety for that entire day, all the jury saw were pics of a blob that the police determined was Rick Allen's vehicle. So Betsy's adamant about this sketch. She's adamant about a completely separate vehicle, and she has no connection to either one of the victims. That's why she's so critical to Rick Allen's freedom.
And her sketch comes.
And you know what else is critical? All these other like the inmate guy, right? That said that he got a confession from Keegan Kline and from Ron Logan and all these other people. Yeah, this ain't gonna go anywhere. Anybody can see past this garbage. Anybody, this is bullcrap.
Comes a few days afterwards, right? And the other sketches are much further down the road.
That is correct. That is correct. And none of these people could specifically pinpoint at exactly what time they saw him, where they were. The story's deviated throughout.
But they have a picture of them on a freaking bench. This is what it boils down to. And this is what she doesn't want to say is what she's trying to discredit is the picture at 126 where they took a picture before they left. How can you? All that means, lady, is that happened after 126, whether that's at 130 or 131. I don't know. And the later that gets past 130, the less likely that Richard Allen can walk all the way to the Monon High Bridge and walk back past the Myers entrance before Betsy Blair can get down there. That's the only thing that means. So the more you want to push it back past 126, lady, the worse it looks for Richard Allen.
Throughout the years, Betsy Blair's is the only one that never deviated.
So we didn't get to see the trial because, again, the judge did not permit cameras. But some of the most compelling evidence is the fact that Richard Allen confessed. The jury believed it. Prosecutors said it. And that became a huge part of how he was convicted. Now, the defense wants to bring up a lot of evidence about why they believe that confession or alleged confession was coerced. And a lot of it has to do with the conditions in solitary confinement that he was subjected to. But I want you to hear the confession. And probably the most important one is the phone call that he makes to his own wife.
Honey?
Yeah.
Are you there? Are you there?
Yes, babe. Yeah, babe.
What's going on?
I just wanted to apologize to you.
What's going on, sweetheart? Are you not feeling well? You did
No,
what?
I did it.
What?
I killed Abby. I killed Abby and Libby.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't, dear.
Yes, I did.
Don't say
I
you
don't know
did that.
why.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't, dear. You're not feeling well. There's something wrong. They've messed up your meds or something there.
No, I mean, I evidently did it.
No, you didn't. Why would you say that?
Because he did it, woman. You just in denial. This is what I mean by love is blind. Love is blind doesn't mean that you're going to fall in love with somebody. It doesn't matter what they look like. I mean, that could be it too, but that's not what the term means. What love is blind means is that you're blind to see what's right in front of you because you love this person, including who they are, even when they're telling you who they are. And this isn't the only time they want to bring this up. And then she's going to go in there and talk about how this guy was threatened and stuff in solitary confinement. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people in solitary confinement. There's a ton of people that are there. He got there before his sentencing, but that doesn't change the fact that there's people that are in solitary confinement. They did that for his protection. They did that because at the holding cell place, they did not have, let's think about it logically. Again, who, what, when, where, and why. Where are they? Delphi, Indiana. Do you really think that small town has the correction facility and the infrastructure to monitor somebody 24/7 on self-harm watch?
Because maybe I did.
You know what I mean?
No, you didn't.
Do they have that? Probably not. Most of the jailers probably go to the large prison because of the financial aspect behind it. That's how it is everywhere I've known. They go to the bigger ones, and then the smaller ones are very less populated. And if, you go and you work there, then you move on to the bigger one to get more money. And so they didn't have it. So if they would have put him with buddies, right? Because that was one of the other things. Oh, they have him in solitary confinement. He's not in general population. If he would have been in general pop and he would have gotten stabbed or all this other stuff, or if he would have hurt himself, then these people that are crying that he was in solitary confinement would have been crying that, oh, how could they not protect him? How could they not put him in solitary confinement? So in this scenario here, it's whether you did it or you didn't do it, you were wrong. Now, the only thing, and we're going to stop this video here, because the only thing I want to hear is this last part about what he says. But the only thing that she brings up is that the psychiatrist lady that had an interest in the case. Now she goes into saying that she thought that the psychiatrist lady was um, thought that he was guilty and went in it with this notion and maybe perhaps influenced him into confessing. Okay, and maybe, but if I remember correctly, I believe she may have went in there with that opinion, but she also was giving him thoughts and telling him things like, people think you're innocent, and that maybe her opinion was swayed the other way, that he was innocent at some point until he confessed. She talks about some of these confessions being written by prisoner guards and other convicts, etc. Oh, so it's only convicts, telling a story is only beneficial when they're saying this random story that benefits your client, right? But when the convicts are writing down the the confessions that Richard Allen is saying, then that's when it's not good enough, right? That part I thought was hilarious. When she said that, she's like, oh, well, it's not like Richard Allen confessed. They got these confessions from convicts. Oh, but the confession from convicts that were gotten from Keegan Kline or Ron Logan, supposedly, those are a-okay. Get out of here. Well, this is what Vinny had to say at the end. Let's listen to that. That's the last thing I wanted to play, because that's all the rest of this was oh, Richard Allen, he was chewing on his Bible and rubbing feces on his face. I get it, but if that's all it takes for you to get off on murder, then by all means, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are willing to rub shit on themselves just to get off. I mean, I feel like that right now listening to these two.
Was taken at 2:13, and they claimed that Rick abducted the girls at 2:13 and had everything wrapped up by 3:30,
and was out of there.
Completely out of there.
Oh, so this is the other thing. I'm glad I didn't go all the way. So this is one of the last things that they said. Their argument is that there was movement on the phone because something was plugged in to Libby's phone or Abby's phone. I don't remember which phone it was, and that it was a headphone jack, and that their theory was that that somebody plugged it in because they were trying to get it so that it wouldn't it wouldn't make a sound, right? Because people were calling, it may have been ringing. The problem with this is, and this is what her whole explanation is that when they did that and they looked at from the time that that the phone rang, because somebody did call, and the time that it went into the headphone jack mode was less than a fraction of a second. I think it was like 0.001 seconds of when it happened. And the problem with those phones are when they get wet or they get dirt in them, which both happened with this phone, and somebody calls, it automatically does that. Now, her argument is that they had an expert that went out there and said that that's not the case. But when they brought this up to the IT police officer, he went and I guess they did a break. He went and did a Google search and found out that that's what happens. And she's like, well, they believed a Google search over their expert. And I'm like, well, I mean, would you rather believe your own eyes? Because if you just go to YouTube and do that, I don't have it, brought up. Let me see if I can do it. I don't remember the exact phone. iPhone, water, was it headphone? iPhone headphones, water damage. Let's see if this is the one that. No, that's headphone input. See, when this had occurred, I had looked it up, and there was this this deal that when iPhones get wet, they go into it. Now, she brings it up here that the officer went and did a Google search, which is true, and you can do that. I just don't remember the exact. I don't remember the exact model of phone that it was, and there are YouTube videos of this happening. And so you can watch this in real time happen on a YouTube video. So would you rather prefer somebody tell you a story that's getting paid from the defense team saying it's impossible, or would you, rather see the videos where they show you it's possible? Now, the problem, and I hate to burst or bubble about this, is that the prosecution wasn't prepared for that question the first time. They didn't have the expert to go up there and say, this is what happens. I bet your bottom dollar that they will be the second time if this ever goes to trial. We can rub these looks off these people's faces, because the next time, if even gets that far, which I doubt, but if they do go to trial, I guarantee you the prosecution is going to be prepared for that. They're going to have an expert, and there's going to be an experiment to show that that's what happens in that moment, that this wasn't a scenario where somebody plugged in the headphones. Because, hey, you know what? It doesn't ever show that somebody unplugged them, and when they found the phone, it didn't have headphones in. An iPhone 6S. Thank you so much. Let me look that up real quick. I appreciate that. iPhone 6S water test headphone jack issue. Let me see if that pulls it up. Oh, that's that waterproof stuff. I need to find the exact video. Here it is.
Okay, so you guys have your iPhone 6S or 6S Plus, and basically your speakers aren't working. And when you log into your phone, when you're into your phone and you push the volume up button or down volume button, and you get this headphones thing, basically your headphone is stuck. And I'm gonna show you guys how to fix this. I'm gonna basically give you two options what you can do.
And so this was a common issue, and this is how you fix the problem. But yeah, this was a very common issue with these phones. Stuck in headphone mode. There we go. And so this was a common thing with this phone. How to fix, easy fix, stuck. How to fix water damage, iPhone 6, stuck in headphone mode.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Andre, and today it rained, and I recorded something on my phone, on my iPhone 6. Yes, 6, and my sound don't work on it. So I kind of did some research online, and it actually says, look what it says. It says headphone. So it thinks it's in like headphone mode. And
so here you go. I mean, as soon as they get wet, that's what happens. So this whole thought process that this was somebody the Flash himself could not be like, oh, the phone is starting to ring. Let me yank out these headphone jacks out of my pocket, plug them in, or lift up the body, plug them in, put the body over the phone, and do all this in a matter of a fraction of a second. If you believe that, you're just out of your mind. I'm sorry. That's just ridiculous. But in the end, has my mind changed? No. I still think that Richard Allen is 100% guilty. I believe he committed this crime. Do I think they railroaded him? No, I don't. I think that he wanted to use any means, and you just can't do that. You can't just go in there and throw people's name into the under the mud and just to do so, without any evidence or proof, without any due process or anything. Go in there and say, all right, I think it was this guy because he had a asterisk written on his hand, and I don't care that he has a solid alibi. I don't care if he's on video during the time that the crime happened. I want to throw this guy under the bus for that, so the conspiracies or the conspirators can come out and say these things. So I don't think the appeal is going to go anywhere. But if it does, I think that there's probably going to be a stronger case by the prosecution. They're going to know how the defense wants to attack this. Now, if they get a new trial, I guess we can agree that that means that they are going to allow some of this stuff like the oddness and things of that nature in. I don't see it happening, but we'll see. I'll answer a couple of your questions for the next few minutes. We've already got about 2 hours. That's quite a bit longer than I thought I was going to be out here. I'll go back up and see if you have a couple of stars. Put a couple of stars so I know you guys are talking to me and not each other. Let's see. Who is that woman? Honestly, she was a private investigator that was hired by the defense team, I believe, or put herself on the defense team. That's one of the other things too that I've noticed about some of these folks, that you can tell when they want just like fame, fortune, or whatever, and they're trying to just ride off the coattails of something. It's those people that show up out of nowhere that weren't asked for anything. They're like dog experts or something of that nature, and they just show up and say, we want to help out the defense without being called. I'm always leery about those folks. And I think, I don't know, it's just my opinion, but I think she put herself on the defense team for whatever reason. But that's what I've heard. I agree with this statement and this one. I think he's guilty. I don't there's not much that anybody can tell me that would make me think differently at this point. Now, could he have had somebody else involved with him? Maybe. I don't think so, given the fact that, we looked at the test that Steve from True Crime Web did, and it didn't, he did a timing test, and I think he did everything in about 7 minutes, moving bodies, changing things around, the whole 9 yards. And Steve, he's not as young as what Richard Allen was at the time in 2017. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that this whole thing was it was sick. But oh, you know what? I forgot I was going to play the ending of what he said. I forgot I was going to do that. Let's do that real quick.
The state claims the girls, the bridge guy video was taken at 2:13, and they claim that Rick abducted the girls at 2:13 and had everything wrapped up by 3:30.
And was out of there.
Completely out of there.
It's important. I want to remind you that the purpose of this episode and looking at this evidence was not that, hey, Richard Allen is 100% innocent.
Because you can't look at anybody in the eye and say that, bro. You know very well. I know you're not stupid. I know very well you think you know the truth. And that's why you're saying things like that. Because if you truly believe that this guy was innocent, you wouldn't be saying this.
It's that Richard Allen was railroaded, and the jury didn't get to hear all the evidence in the case. Evidence uncovered by the police, by investigators, an alternative theory in the case. And in the end, if they hear both theories, they still may very well convict Richard Allen. But our system of justice demands that trials are fair.
Exactly. And they demand that if you're going to pull somebody into court and accuse them, that you have evidence and due process. And what Richard Allen's team wants to do is they want to bring in Brad Holder, Elvis Fields, which, Elvis Fields, I have my thoughts about him too, but they want to bring in these guys without any due process, without any evidence, guys that have an alibi in Brad Holder, who's on video during the time of the crime, and want to be able to disclose that as a possible thing that occurred here. And you can't rob Paul to pay Peter. You know what I'm saying? That's basically what he's trying to do here, but legally.
Even for people who may be guilty of murder.
People that are guilty of murder deserve, especially kids, this guy should be in freaking general pop, and if he would deserve exactly what's coming to him. He deserves a lot worse than what he's gotten based on what he's done. Sorry guys, I don't sympathize with chomos and people that kill kids and hurt kids and stuff like that, like this guy does. I don't. Sorry. I'm not gonna, him eating his own crap is the least of, he deserves more than that. How does an unspent 40 cal round from Richard Allen's gun end up at the crime scene with the bodies? That the bullet aspect is, it's there. I'll be real and honest. I don't know anything about the science when it comes to a ejected round and the markings that it makes. But at some point, people probably were questioning DNA and a bunch of other things at its infancy, especially defense attorneys, because they didn't understand it, or they knew that it meant bad things for their client, so they would try to make it seem like it's not important. But you're right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I suppose what he did was he probably cocked the gun in efforts to use that as intimidation, and it ejected a round. Yeah. No, I mean, when I was listening to this and this guy's just kind of going off like, oh, he deserves this and he deserves to be free. Well, yeah, let's put him free in a playground where your kids are at. How would you like? Would you be going around saying, yeah, let's keep him free if his next playground that he's going to hang around is one that your kids visit? Or are you going to be crying and screaming, no, we got to keep a monster like that in prison? Yeah. Some people make me kind of sick. But then again, some people were willing to, lower their standards and morals so that they can get paid or get views and things of that nature. It's a modern way of selling your soul, in my opinion, but that's what it is. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put pain and hurt and families and things of that nature, just so that I can get a buck or a view. That's wild to me. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to be it for me tonight. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. I'll be back on probably Saturday or Sunday to do another show. I want to get back to doing 4 a week. I've been doing 3, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I haven't been doing one on the weekend. I'm going to get back to it. I know that there was some audio that was dropped in the Nancy Guthrie case. I think it was like a 911 call. I want to listen to it and react with you guys. And then, I know there's some other alien stuff, so we've been looking into that. If you guys are into that. And also, guys, shameless plug, I'm going to do one real quick. Married to the Hobby. That's my other channel. I do Pokemon. And so if you guys are interested in like ripping Pokemon packs, I think tomorrow is when me and my wife are going to drop our next video. So this is us, Married to the Hobby. We're at 137 subscribers. If you guys can go and join, I'd appreciate it. We got a video dropping tomorrow. I just got to edit it up. We ripped open some booster bundles, and we have a giveaway when we get to 500 subscribers. So I'd appreciate it if you guys would join. But thank you guys tonight. I appreciate everybody being here. I'll see you guys this weekend. See y'all next time. Peace out, y'all. Much love. Bye.